Welcome on in to another episode of the Dog Check Podcast, part of the Believe Network of podcasts, and of course, streaming on Bally Sports Cleveland. I'm Spencer German, and I think we can officially say football is back. Training camp opens up this week for the Browns, so it's that time of year, folks. And also back, following a very busy offseason of his own, Eric Metcalf, Browns legend, joining us back on the show. Eric, I'm glad we're finally getting a chance to interface, man. And I'm sure you're excited, as everybody is, that football season is oh so close. We can taste it.
I'm very excited because, it's this time of year where you just need something to happen. Basketball's over. You got baseball, but if you're not a big baseball fan, it makes it hard to get through the summer. So now the training camp is here, and it's not real games, but you can still taste it. And so the feeling is here. You start to smell the grass in the air, and that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm just happy that it's here.
Let me ask you, as a former player, you're from this, now that you're more of a spectator, taking it in from this angle, this perspective, you're getting excited about training camp. Were you as excited about training camp when you were a player too, or was that kind of like the start of oh, here we go, we got 4 weeks of just hard training? Back then, I'm sure they were still doing doubles and all these different practices and all that. So was it the same anticipation that you have now with the fan lens?
Look here, before you even asked that question, I already had the answer. It is nowhere near the same. Because when you get to the 4th of July as a player, oh, I only got a week or so before I got to go to training camp. And just think about it, for us back in the day, we're talking about going to real tour days, having pads on every day out in the heat. And so we were really, really playing football in July and through August. And so it was tough, and guys just didn't want to do it. And so now, as a fan, I can just sit back and say, oh, they have training camp and they got to go to practice. And, even though it's not the same tour days and the same hitting like we had, it's still the fact that you have to be there. You have to stay in a hotel or a dorm room during the course of this time and just prepare for football each and every day, all day.
Well, I appreciate that perspective, and I'm sure you much enjoy the chance to just kind of take it in as a fan now than you did as a player. So that's good. I want to start with one of the I think biggest storyline heading into training camp for the Browns this week, and it centers around Amari Cooper and his current situation. We know he skipped mini camp to kind of make a statement about his current contract situation going to the final year of that deal. Is this something? From the sounds of it, it's still kind of up in the air whether or not he's going to report and be part of training camp. But I mean, I just get the sense, Eric, that this is something that gets revolved at some point. I think both sides want to get something done. How do you feel about the Amari Cooper situation? And do you think it's something that extends deep into training camp, or something that gets resolved pretty quickly, because we know how important he is to this team?
First, I don't think it extends deep into training camp. I think this is the business of football. Everybody talks about playing football and the game of football. This is the business of football. And so from Amari's standpoint, I can see where he wants to be extended. And then I can see where the Browns are taking their time, because they have to look at all their options. And so I think it gets done relatively quickly, but it's just something that has to happen. When Amari's been the guy for the past couple of years, you have to respect his standpoint. I need to be paid for what I'm worth to be on this team. And so moving forward, he wants to be out there. He wants to be with his team. He wants to be getting better with Deshaun and these guys, because this team could make a run. And so, he has to do his business side of the thing. But at the same time, when it's all said and done, he wants to play for the Cleveland Browns, and I think they'll get it done.
Behind Amari Cooper, and I know we obviously haven't had a chance to catch up much this offseason, so I kind of want to get your read on one of the biggest moves that the team made this offseason, which was, of course, making that trade for Jerry Jeudy, who they're sort of envisioning as this number 2 guy to Amari Cooper in this offense. Looks like, based on what we saw at spring workouts and mini camp, he's going to be their primary guy out of the slot. And so there's a lot of opportunity there for him. What did you first, Eric, make of that trade that the Browns made to acquire him, the subsequent extension that they offered him shortly after getting him in here in Cleveland, and what are you expecting to see from Jerry Jeudy this season in this new Browns offense?
I'm expecting to see what I saw from him at Alabama. They had him all over. They had him in the slot. He was making big plays because their offense was very diversified and everybody was spread out all over the field. And when you have a guy as athletic as him and as fast as him, he could make plays in that slot as well as outside. And so I think that's what we'll see with him at the Browns. Granted, I think Ken Dorsey coming in changes the offense a little bit from where it's been in the past couple of years. It'll be a little more wide open. I think the fact that he's coached a number of guys who have been dual threat quarterbacks. Even if Stefanski calls the plays, it still gives you another eye to put on the offense and say, hey, maybe we should try this. And so I think that bodes well for Deshaun and Jerry Jeudy moving forward in that slot.
Where do you stand, since you brought it up a little bit in your answer there? Where do you stand on who the primary play caller should be? It's interesting because Dorsey, we know, is coming in with this new, bringing some new ideas to the offense and things that they want to do. His main goal, obviously, as we know, is, hey, let's try to get more out of Deshaun Watson. Let's try to use some of those things that he was doing with Josh Allen, doing with Cam Newton. But at the same time, Kevin Stefanski's a 2-time Coach of the Year. Like he earned this role for a reason. And he was brought in to be that play caller. Where do you kind of stand on who should handle those duties this season? Because we don't have an answer on who that's going to be just yet.
Well, I will be honest. In these past couple of years, even though Stefanski has been Coach of the Year, I have wanted him to give up the play calling.
I like this, Eric, because a lot of people are saying, like, why would you take it away from him? I like that you have a different perspective on it.
And I think, and it's not because he can't call plays. I think when he was being a head coach, it's a little different for him. I thought Alex Van Pelt might have opened it up, might have saw things a little differently than he did as a head coach, because he has to think about offense, defense, and special teams when he's calling plays, right? And so I think if the offense is opened up like we think it will be, and they're running different schemes and everything, if he's willing to understand that this is best for us as far as him calling plays and running it like he's a offensive coordinator, then I'm cool with it. I'm cool with him just going out there with a wide open offense, using all the athletes that you have to the best of their ability and making plays. But if we're going to be 3 yards in a cloud of dust and then try to throw the ball on 3rd and 12 or 3rd and 9 to 10, 7 to 10, that's going to be hard. I don't want him to call the plays then. But if he's going to be open to having an open up offense, then I'm all for it.
I like that perspective, like I said, because I do think a lot of us kind of have subscribed to this idea of, hey, listen, like he was the 2-time Coach of the Year for a reason. He got this job for that reason. But you see it from a different perspective where, hey, like there's a lot on your plate as a head coach on game day, and to have to throw that onto your plate as well is maybe just a little bit too much. So yeah, I think that's interesting that you say that, because I think there's a lot more people out there that feel Stefanski should just keep it. But, Dorsey comes in with a different perspective, and it's going to be interesting to see when that decision is made, what the decision actually is.
Right. I mean, because when you think about Ken Dorsey, the thing that people have fresh on their mind is that Buffalo let him go.
Yeah, for sure.
But they never think about the fact that he was with Cam Newton when he was doing his thing. And then when he got to Buffalo, prior to him getting to Buffalo, everybody was thinking Josh Allen was a bust. He gets there, and now Josh Allen is the Josh Allen that we know, that everybody knows or thought he could become. And that was because of Ken Dorsey. And so I'm hoping this is what he does for Deshaun and gives his perspective on how it should go with a dual threat quarterback. And hopefully, because Stefanski's really never coached that type of guy until he got here, until they got to Deshaun, right? And so I think it gives him another, like I said, perspective on seeing how he should do it or ideas on how to do it.
Yeah, and I do think how this offense kind of comes together, what it looks like, the different stuff they try to do throughout training camp and the preseason is going to be one of the big things people are paying attention to throughout the next month or so. Another big storyline people are going to be paying attention to is Nick Chubb and his recovery from that gruesome knee injury. I mean, we just saw last week the video going around of him squatting, I think it was 540 pounds. Guy is ridiculous. Where does the Nick Chubb storyline sort of fall in terms of the storylines that you're really going to be following along with during training camp? And what are some of the other big things that you're going to be watching over the next month?
Well, because it's Nick Chubb, I think I will really watch to see when he comes back. I mean, we saw him, like you said, squatting 500 plus pounds, but at the same time, we also saw him saying, he's not where he wants to be. And that's just the player in him, right? He wants to get back to on the field. He wants to show everybody that he is still Nick Chubb. And I expect him to be. I don't think he should rush into this situation because it's happened to him more than once. I just think he needs to take his time and be 100% when he goes out there. And it might be during a crucial point in the season where we really need him. So we need him to be the best Nick Chubb that he can be. And aside from that, I think I just want to see Deshaun Watson go back to being Deshaun Watson. Yeah. I feel like when he played Baltimore and got hurt that game, I felt like he was on his way. He had played well the week before, goes into Baltimore, beats them on a hurt leg, and I think that he was on his way back before he got injured again. So I'm hoping that with the new offense, with the weapons, whether it be the running backs, whether it be Nick Chubb, Johnson, or even my guy from Texas,
Foreman.
Deontay Foreman. Yes. I just think there's so many weapons and there's so many things that this offense can do that I just look forward to Deshaun being the Deshaun that he once was.
Well, you set the table perfectly for this next question. It's a fun one, but I've been asking some other people this off this podcast, and it's been stumping some people as well. So between those two, do you feel more confident that Nick Chubb can get back to being a top 5 running back in football, or that Deshaun Watson has a chance to get back to being a top 10 quarterback in football?
I'm more confident that Deshaun Watson will be a top 10 quarterback.
Okay.
And it has nothing to do with what Nick has done or will accomplish moving forward. It's all about the fact that he hasn't played that many games since he's been out, right? I mean, since he got to Cleveland, he hasn't played that many games. Of course, there was the suspension. He comes back. He plays, the last 7 or 8 games or whatever it was. Of course he's going to be rusty, right? He's in a situation where he had been sitting out for basically 2 years.
Yeah.
Then he comes back the next year, he gets hurt again. And so it's been rough for him, and it's been a situation where things just haven't fallen into place for him, I mean. But now, I'm going to go back to with Ken Dorsey coming and having a different perspective with a dual threat quarterback. I think it gives him life, and he gets to bounce back from where he was.
I like that answer, and I think that you're certainly onto something, especially with the Ken Dorsey piece, because I think that opens up like a world of opportunity for Deshaun to potentially get back to that player. The reason I lean Chubb is just because, we've seen Nick Chubb come back from a serious knee injury before. Granted, this is different. It was 2 ligaments instead of 1, also later in his career, so I understand that. But I also think like it's hard for me to it's rare in this league that you see a guy go like 3 years without being that player, missing a year. You know, he sat out the 1 year, he had the suspension the next year. And I also wonder from Deshaun's perspective, like if there's my biggest thing with him has been, it seems like there's almost this mental piece with him where he's maybe trying to get it all back at once and like make everybody love him all at once. He's like, I got to make this throw. I got to make that throw. I got to do this thing. And I wonder if that still ends up being a hurdle for him here going into this third year with the Browns. So I lean Chubb, but I do think you're right in that there's definitely some opportunity here for him to finally be unlocked and see that potential that we saw in the second half of that Ravens game, specifically in the Ken Dorsey offense.
Yeah, and what I hope for more than anything is that we scheme some things where guys are open. I mean, we've watched other teams. The Rams, the Chiefs, the 49ers. It seems like the receivers are wide open all over the place. Whereas in the past couple of years with the Browns, our quarterback, no matter who it's been, has had to throw tight throws and get it in there because there was really no separation. And a lot of times that has to do with players, but a lot of times that has to do with schemes as well. And so if, like I said, this new offense or ideas brought to this offense, if we scheming guys wide open, he doesn't have that pressure of having to make the perfect throw. He can just throw it out there, let guys get it, run, and make plays.
Just a reminder to like, follow, subscribe, and review the Dog Check podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Believe Network, and obviously airing us well on Bally Sports Cleveland. Eric Metcalf joining us back on the show this week for the start of training camp, and excited to have him along We'll keep talking training camp with you here, Eric, and get a few more things in here. We know that there's sort of this interesting situation brewing with the tackle spots in this offense right now, where you have DeJuan Jones coming back for his second year, Jedrick Wills entering that fifth year option year of his deal without an extension sort of already on the table for him. And then Jack Conklin, who got the extension a couple of years ago, coming back from an injury. Really, all three of these guys are coming back from injuries, and the only one who's truly back is DeJuan Jones. He was doing some stuff in the spring. So he likely going to be slotting in at right tackle. Wills, once he's back, likely going to be the left tackle. And it sounds like Jack Conklin might take a little bit longer to get back on the field. But once that day comes, once you have all three of these guys healthy together, how are you handling that situation? Because it's fascinating. Like, Conklin's the more proven guy, but DeJuan Jones is the future. Conklin's contract is also more difficult to move on from. Do you try DeJuan Jones on the left side if Jedrick Wills is struggling? Like, how do you think they should sort this whole thing out when the time comes that they're all back together?
You just answered it for me.
I'm sorry. I said too much.
DeJuan Jones on the left side and Conklin at the right. And go from there. When in the perfect world, when everyone's healthy, that's how I do it. That would be my offensive line. No matter who the coach is, I would think DeJuan Jones and Jack Conklin will give you your best options at the tackle position. I mean, DeJuan Jones, what he did at the right tackle when he was subbing for Jack Conklin was unbelievable as a rookie.
Yeah.
And so I think Jack Conklin, like you said, being the veteran, his contract's difficult to move on from. You got to play him, right? And so if you're going to do that, you play him. Put DeJuan Jones is a very big guy, can protect that backside, and let's go from there. And then Jedrick just has to be a guy who can fill in on both sides.
I don't know if you saw the comments that Wyatt Teller had. He did a podcast with Tyler Dunn, who has his own sort of independent thing he covers the NFL for, his own independent site. But he was on this podcast, and he talked a lot about just the struggles of playing for Bill Callahan, like how difficult that is because he's such a hard ass and he's really hard on people. It made me wonder a little bit because I was like, listen, even Wyatt Teller, who and he to be fair, like he did praise Bill Callahan throughout the interview too. He was like, listen, that guy made me the player I am today, but like there was days where I was at my lowest and he made me feel worse about myself. Like it's not easy to play for him. And I just wondered, like, hearing Wyatt Teller talk about that, somebody who's regarded as one of the best guards in the sport, somebody who's a Pro Bowler. Is there any thought that maybe the change at offensive line coach Andy Dickerson coming in helps Jedrick Wills maybe get to that level that we haven't quite seen him get to consistently enough yet?
I mean, it could happen. I mean, situations often dictate how a player goes out there and performs. I mean, when you talk about a Bill Callahan, arguably one of the best to ever do it at the offensive line coaching position. I think when Wyatt Teller says he made his days rough sometime, I think that's what made Bill Callahan who he was, right?
Yeah.
That's why he was able to put great lines together because this is who I am. This is how I coach. And it might have affected some people differently. And so, like you said, Wyatt Teller said, it would keep him down sometimes, but it still made him the player that he is today. And so, when people put a different set of eyes on it, it often looks different. Guys often perform better or sometimes even worse. We just hope that people get rejuvenated in a new situation, go out there and perform to the best of their ability, and we hope that's good enough.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too because, different guys respond to different coaching styles. Some people – like that hard ass mentality works for them. Others, they need a little bit more TLC. And I understand like some people would sit there and say like, well, these players are just soft nowadays, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's just like kind of understanding the people and understanding who you're coaching. And so, yeah, if Andy Dickerson brings a different perspective, maybe it benefits him. We'll see how that plays out during camp. Other names, Eric, other players that you're going to have your eye on during training camp, maybe not the obvious ones, not your Deshaun Watsons and your Nick Chubbs. Is there anybody that maybe you're excited to sort of see get out on the field and see what they can do and see where they maybe fit in the grand scheme of this roster?
Yes. I'm going to go with Devin Bush.
I like that answer.
And I'm going to go with him because we've seen him as a player when he's healthy. He hasn't been healthy in the last couple of years, but we're hoping we can get the Devin Bush healthy. Right? Because in the past few years, I thought that was one of our downfalls, our linebackers, as a group. I mean, Anthony Walker was hurt all the time, didn't play for us that much. And JOK was JOK, so he made plays. He was all over the field, especially last year. Sione Takitaki, he wasn't the guy who could cover guys. And so now, if you get a healthy Devin Bush and Jordan Hicks and these guys could run. They can make plays. They can fill in the gaps in the run game. They can cover running backs and running backs and tight ends out in the flat or in the swing. And so I'm looking forward to like Devin Bush being that guy on the other side from a JOK and making those same type of plays.
Speaking of Devin Bush and the defensive side of the ball, it's tough, man, to replicate what the Browns did last year on defense, to be the number one rated defense in terms of yards allowed. I always like to say defenses in the NFL are kind of like bullpens in baseball, where like year to year they can just be so different. Now it's Jim Schwartz. Generally, his defenses are pretty consistent, but are you expecting at least a little bit of regression from that group, or are you expecting more of the same from last year?
I'm expecting more. Not of the same. I'm expecting more. and second year in his system, there weren't that many changes, and the defense did not travel last year, right? They didn't travel well last year, and so I'm expecting that they go out there this year and travel well in the second year in the system. They played well at home, but we needed them to travel well. And because if they would have traveled well last year, we would have probably played more games. We play a playoff game at home, right?
Yeah.
And so, which gives you a better opportunity at home where they had been playing well. And so I expect more from this defense because I think everybody, Schwartz knows the players and the players know him. And so it'll be easy to go out there and play.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Schwartz has already talked about, implementing some new wrinkles and disguising some things differently, and I think that'll obviously benefit them. It also is going to be tough this year because of the slate of quarterbacks that you play. You got Dak Prescott coming in week 1. You got Patrick Mahomes later in the schedule. Tua and what he's been doing in Miami has been notable. Justin Herbert comes to town, so it's going to put this defense to the test for sure. And off of that, that you have a really tough division that you play in with some good quarterbacks as well. Let me ask you this, Eric, as we kind of get close to wrapping things up here for this week. Are the Ravens just by default because, hey, you got the reigning MVP and the reigning division champs, are they the team to beat in the AFC North, you think, this year? Or do the Bengals make a run? Or are the Bengals maybe in that conversation because they get Joe Burrow back? Are the Steelers maybe still in that conversation because they're your biggest rival and they made some changes? Who is the team to beat, you think, in the AFC North?
If you take the Browns out, I'd go with the Ravens. Maybe if you take the Browns out. But so I'd go with the Ravens, like you said, because they have the two-time MVP. Granted, they've had some changes with the defensive coordinator going out to Seattle. But I think their culture gives them a great opportunity to still be who they are. You got Lamar talking about losing weight so he can be more elusive again, which would be a problem for everybody if that's the case. And so I look at them, aside from the Browns, as being the team in that division. I think it's still a division that the Browns can win because when we look at all these other teams, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore, those guys have had significant changes, right? And the Browns have not. Yeah. So I think the team moving forward as the Browns team, these guys they're older, more mature. They know what they want in the system from the coaches. What the coaches want from them. And so I think they'll go out there and be able to just play free and fast. And so you take the Browns out of it, I think the Ravens, but I still think the Browns have the opportunity to win this division.
Well, and Eric, no denying this is the best division in football, right? You got 4 teams that legitimately you can make an argument for all of them winning that division. We talk about the Browns schedule being tough, but all these teams are playing very similar schedules. They're all playing very similar teams anyway, so they all have to kind of go through it. But I look around the league and I can't think of a division. It kind of stinks for the Browns in that way. They have some really good competition, but I can't think of a division that has this level of competition. 3 teams that made the playoffs last year, a 4th that could have made it. All 4 teams finished above 500, and the Bengals finished last because they lost Joe Burrow. Find me a division that's tougher than this one.
You can't. And so when I go through the schedule and I try to pick how many games the Browns are going to win, I just automatically say split the division. I never give anyone a sweep.
Good philosophy.
Because it's hard to do, right? When's the last time we've actually really seen that when everybody's been healthy? And so I just split the division. So you're gonna go 3-3 in the division, and then you go from there.
You know what? I'm putting that in the memory bank. When I make my predictions, I'm sure we'll do some predictions on this show, but I'm gonna remember, follow Eric's lead on just splitting the division. You're gonna go 3-3 in the division, and we'll call it a day. Eric,
I was gonna say the only way that and it didn't even happen last year, but the only way that you think you can get a chance to not split is if you beat one of the teams early and you play that same team on the very last game.
And they got some injuries by that point and everything. Yeah, exactly. Eric, I know you have some really exciting travel plans coming up here. You're going to be over in France and Paris for the Olympics. I'm not, you don't have to get into the nitty gritty of anything, but I just want to know, like, what are you most looking forward to about being over there and being around these great athletes and watching our country's athletes compete?
You know, it's crazy because I've been to multiple Olympics. I've been to the south of France, but I've never been to Paris.
I was thinking about asking that, but I was like, that seems too obvious. Eric's definitely been to Paris before.
I've been to Monaco and Saint-Tropez and all these guys, all over those places, but never to actual Paris. Wow. And so I'm just looking forward to going to see the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre and all that kind of stuff. You know, you get there, and when you think Paris, you know, you think you got to be cool. I'm a cool kind of guy. And so I want to just walk around and maybe in a beret and smoke cigars and just take on the city of Paris.
Well, I'm very jealous. I have to head down to – I'm going to be in luxurious West Virginia for a couple of days covering Browns camp, which will be fun, but it's not quite Paris. So I'll make the most of that. But I hope you enjoy your trip, man, truly. And I'm glad we got a chance to kind of interface here before training camp gets rolling this week. And I know that we'll obviously be keeping in touch here and connecting again for future episodes coming down the pike as we get closer and closer to the regular season.
Yes, sir. Au revoir.
I like it. He's Eric Metcalf. I'm Spencer German. This is the Dog Check Podcast, part of the Believe Network of podcasts. And of course, on Bally Sports Cleveland, we encourage you to like, review, subscribe to our podcast, and follow us. It's an exciting time of year, folks. We got a lot of good stuff to cover, and we'll be leading you up to the regular season and into football season as well. So stay tuned. It's another episode in the books. And until next time, go Browns.
Go Browns.